Did you know that almost half of young Europeans surveyed in 2024 said they would choose authoritarianism over democracy? It seems like many people have forgotten just how tough life was under authoritarian regimes. Thankfully, some incredible movies made by those who experienced those times use art and humor to show what life really was like. Hi, I'm Ella from Transylvania. I post videos about Central and Eastern Europe, and today I will show you 3 Eastern Bloc movies that can teach us about the past to help us protect our future. And you will be shocked by how relevant these themes still are today. These movies have aged like fine wine. So stick around because the last one is my all-time favorite movie. And without further ado, let's dissect this topic. The Witness is a Hungarian political satire from 1969, directed by Bacó Péter. It was made during a time when criticizing the communist government was almost impossible. Because of this, the movie was banned, but over the years it became a cult classic thanks to its brilliant use of humor to expose the problems in a flawed system. But why did it trigger the communists so much? The story takes place in 1949, one of the most turbulent and controversial years in Hungarian history. Basically, in the Hungarian People's Republic, individuals were often arrested on fabricated charges of fascism, collaboration with the West, treason, blah blah blah, all kinds of BS accusations weaponized to silence political opponents, intellectuals, and religious leaders. The year 1949 was especially notorious for its show trials, which were basically legal proceedings where victims were forced to confess under torture and threats. A famous example is Roy László, Hungary's Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was falsely accused of being a Titói spy working for Western powers, which was seen as a threat to Hungary's independence. With this background, it's easy to see how the characters in The Witness reflect real people and events from that time, adding even more depth to the film's sharp and clever satire. The film follows Pelikán József, a single father and former member of the communist underground during World War II, who now works as a dam keeper. His quiet life changes when he reconnects with Daniel Zoltán, an old friend who is now a government official. While the two are together, things suddenly take a quick turn when police officers show up to investigate Pelikán for a supposed horrible crime. And while Daniel Zoltán tries to defend his friend and prove his innocence, in a dark and funny twist, he accidentally exposes Pelikán's crime of killing a pig to feed his family.
Hoppa! Na hello, Rafik!
Yes, he was arrested for wanting to feed his kids, which sadly was a pretty common charge at the time. Pelikán is unexpectedly released by higher authorities, leaving him confused by the government's inconsistency, and soon he is dragged into a meeting with the mysterious comrade Virag, who treats him with luxuries and hints that he'll soon ask him for a favor.
Egyszer majd kérni fogunk magától valamit.
Tessék már kérni.
Mindent a maga idejében.
Nem bírom a feszültséget.
Virag starts giving Pelikán little jobs that he is completely unqualified for, making them seem like they are done as a favor for Pelikán. And as expected, Pelikán keeps failing at these tasks, which often lead to him being sent back to prison. Virag continues to swoop in like a hero, saving him each time and making him feel even more indebted. After the third failure, Virag's true plan is revealed. He wants Pelikán to testify in a show trial and lie to incriminate an innocent man. Caught between staying true to himself and trying to survive, Pelikán struggles with the moral cost of the regime's manipulations. Now, the chemistry between the two lead characters is incredible, thanks to the brilliant writing and the even better acting. Kálai Ferenc nails the role of Pelikán, the confused everyman who just wants to provide for his family but keeps getting caught up in absurd power games. He perfectly embodies the average Hungarian citizen of 1949, plus he is struggling with an issue every Hungarian man has to deal with at least once in his lifetime.
Mi újság nálatok? Az asszony?
Megszökött egy uszályossal, egy románnal.
Meanwhile, Őze Lajos gives an absolutely chilling performance as Virag, the manipulative bureaucrat who's impossible not to dislike. His calculated, creepy behavior and cold tone are enough to make you uncomfortable.
Én csak azt mondom, Pelikán elvtárs. A nemzetközi helyzet egyre fokozódik.
Watching Virag at work feels like a lesson in political manipulation and how those in power can take advantage of others. In one scene, he mocks Pelikan by serving him a fancy pork dinner, cruelly reminding him of his so-called crime, and he also pretends to be a caring friend using shared memories and past favors to make Pelikan feel like he owes him. He takes advantage of Pelikan's family struggles, using them as leverage, and justifies his lies and schemes by claiming they only hurt imperialists. Plus, his use of vague and unsettling political talk, like constantly saying the international situation is intensifying,
A nemzetközi helyzet egyre fokozódik.
keeps Pelikan unsure and a bit worried. Over time, Pelikan starts repeating Virag's propaganda.
Rég láttalak, Pelikán. Hát igen, a nemzetközi helyzet egyre fokozódik.
Watching this movie again gave me chills because Virag's tactics feel disturbingly familiar when you look at recent political events all over Europe. Experts have even compared this kind of political manipulation tactic to the lover boy method used by sex traffickers, where the abuser pretends to care for or protect their victim while they are secretly exploiting them.
Loverboy-ul. Asta e din zona traficului de persoane, da? Metoda asta, loverboy, de care ați auzit. Adică vine unul și îți spune tot ce vrei să auzi. Tu fiind foarte supărat, foarte nemulțumit. Și vine unul și zice, ești în siguranță cu mine. Și există o conspirație mondială și tu ești victima. Dar eu voi avea grijă de tine. Asta fac populiștii și asta fac loverboy. Că după aia ne duc la produs, asta e.
Victims of this kind of manipulation become confused, tricked, and unable to see how badly they are being used.
A figura lényege egy naív rácsodálkozás. Maga teljes lényével hitt valakinek, és hirtelen rádöbben, hogy becsapták.
And it's heartbreaking to see how Pelikan's good traits, his innocence, his loyalty, and honesty are all turned against him. He ends up caught in fraud and corruption, feeling torn and guilty the entire time. With that said, The Witness is a masterpiece. The sharp dialogue, perfect pacing, and the spot-on comedic timing make it unforgettable. The slow build-up of tension is brilliantly executed, especially as the audience anticipates the moment when Pelikan is finally asked for the favor. The movie shows how opportunistic people never really change, because those who snitched under fascism are doing the same under communism as well. Also, Virag purposely sets Pelikan up to fail, pinning his mistakes on innocent people while letting actual criminals go free as long as they are useful to the regime. And before the trial, they completely invent a fake version of Pelikan using made-up evidence to frame an innocent man. At the same time, real criminals are brought in as fake witnesses, showing just how ridiculous the system was. The film's humor is a highlight, with Pelikan delivering absurd, hilarious one-liners that keep things light even in the darkest scenes.
Hát gratulálok, magát rehabilitálni fogják.
Inkább tessék akasztani.
The amusement park scene, where Pelikan hilariously messes up a job he is totally unqualified for, always cracks me up no matter how many times I watch it. Also, the cinematography is stunning, especially for its time. It has this great color combination of muted browns, deep burgundies, and fiery reds, setting the perfect vibe for this type of movie, because these colors create a mix of urgency, danger, and nostalgia that adds so much depth to the film's atmosphere. Quick intertitles pop up between time skips, keeping the pacing smooth and the story easy to follow. The framing is brilliant. Virag gives off a serious, menacing vibe, especially when he's messing with his little gadgets, and awkward background noises during these little moments only add to the tension, making everything feel even more unsettling.
Mi újság, Pelikán elvtárs?
Hát én tudjam.
Foglaljon helyet.
The brass-heavy soundtrack is also fantastic, but what really makes it powerful is how sparingly it's used. An interesting thing to note about this movie is that director Bocso Péter started out as a screenwriter in the 50s before transitioning to directing in the 1960s. The Witness is by far his most famous film and arguably the most legendary Hungarian movie ever made. Unfortunately, his other films didn't leave the same mark, likely because The Witness was banned upon release, and this may have shaken his confidence and made him less inclined to create similarly bold works. The film's sharp humor and over-the-top absurdity perfectly captures the lingering problems of that era, many of which still feel relevant in Eastern Europe today. So if you're looking for a film that's both entertaining and eye-opening, this one is a must-watch.
Stop right there!
I just found out that you're not subscribed to my channel.
Why?
Subscribe. The Earth's Most Beloved Son is a 1993 Romanian drama based on Marin Preda's controversial novel, written shortly before his mysterious death under communist rule. And of course, the book was banned at the time, since its brutally honest portrayal of life in socialist Romania didn't exactly sit well with the regime. Wow, shocking. Director Șerban Marinescu finally brought the story to the screen after the 1989 revolution, turning it into a cultural landmark for post-communist Romania. So what made this story so explosive that some believe it cost Preda his life? Well, much like Hungary's infamous show trials, Romania's communist regime used fake accusations to crush dissent and keep people in line. But here they often skipped the whole trial part. They just threw you into a black car and gave you a one-way ticket to a labor camp and a whole lot of suffering. The secret police, known as the Securitate, were basically paranoia in human form, constantly watching, accusing, and punishing citizens for supposed anti-state activities. And fun fact, we have now not one but two former Securists in parliament. So yeah, the irony is that all our far-right anti-system political parties are full of them. In addition to political opponents, intellectuals and religious leaders were often targeted as well. Many were tortured, forced to confess to crimes they didn't commit, or sent to harsh labor camps where thousands died. And this film captures that era's darkness with heartbreaking accuracy. The Earth's Most Beloved Son tells the story of Victor Petrini, a philosophy professor whose life falls apart after being falsely accused and imprisoned. One rainy night, while sharing a quiet moment with his wife, their peace is shattered when two Securitate officers break into the apartment to arrest Petrini for the most serious crime of all, making a joke. Petrini receives a letter from a friend from a foreign country, humorously signed "I'm waiting your ordinances," which is a reference to an old cabaret show they enjoyed together years ago. The phrase is wrongly interpreted by uneducated officials as "I'm waiting for your orders," and they label Petrini as a supposed terrorist. So yeah, my guy got cancelled for a joke before social media even existed.
Păi scrie negru pe alb, uite aici. Aștept ordinele dumneavoastră. Asta e adresat.
Nu ordinele, ordonanțele. O glumă.
Glumă pe dracu, e o scrisoare.
Despite trying to explain the mix-up, Petrini soon faces the harsh reality that no one who enters the Securitate's building ever leaves as an innocent person. He's quickly sent to a brutal labor camp, marking the start of his nightmare. The first part of the film shows the intense pain he endures in captivity, where he soon learns that the guards only know about 200 words and anything more than that triggers their violent reactions. So yeah, maybe the commies were just dyslexic and they heard that people wanted pâine, but they thought we wanted pain.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Okay, I will let myself out now. Sorry, this movie is so dark, I have to crack some jokes to get through this. The prison scenes are heart-wrenching, showing prisoners treated like disposable objects, with sickness and death being ignored or exploited. Despite the immense pain he's going through, Petrini tries small acts of defiance to hold on to his dignity, but these come at a great personal cost. In the second half of the movie, we see Petrini trying to rebuild rebuild his life after his release, but it's filled with new struggles. His wife has moved on, his father doubts his innocence, and his criminal record makes him finding work nearly impossible. To make things worse, his old friends distance themselves from him, unwilling to be linked to his past. The years of hard labor and trauma leave Petrini looking older than his own father, and his health continues to worsen until he completely loses his voice. As he struggles to find his place in a broken society, Petrini realizes that the corruption, exploitation, and moral decay he faced in prison are actually present everywhere, even outside. The film powerfully shows how oppression robs people from their humanity, both in captivity and in quote-unquote freedom. Victor Petrini, brilliantly played by Stefan Iordake, is a deeply tragic character whose transformation from an idealistic professor to a broken man highlights the devastating effects of oppression. At the beginning, Petrini is a good moral person who selflessly carries his sick friend all night while enduring punishment in freezing water, putting his friend's well-being above his own comfort. His strong sense of right and wrong pushes him to stand up to those who disrespect the dead, even though it leads to repeated punishment. However, as the harsh conditions take their toll, Petrini slowly comes to the painful realization that to survive he has to abandon his morals and do things he never thought possible. A moment of betrayal shatters his last hope in loyalty or humanity within the brutal system. He enters the labor camp as an innocent man, but leaves having been forced to commit horrific acts to stay alive. After leaving the camp, Petrini struggles to adjust to life on the outside. He feels abandoned by society, discarded despite his innocence, and weighed down by the trauma of his imprisonment. Petrini's tragic journey shows the soul-crushing power of systemic oppression, leaving viewers heartbroken as they watch a man who started with good intentions spiral into moral corruption. The movie connects with today's Romania, where many people in power still act superior despite being ignorant and uneducated. The behavior of the guards and securitate officers eerily resembles that of many modern-day politicians, even by using big words they don't fully understand just to appear smarter. I mean, does this guy's speech remind you of someone whose constant yapping you've been hearing a lot lately?
Cu ajutorul unui instrument ingenios vom învăța să facem împreună lucruri folositoare pentru oameni, pentru țărani în special, căci meseria este brățara de aur, așa e?
Under the regime, intellectuals were often targeted. Talented people were either sent to labor camps or forced into low-paying, unskilled jobs, just like Petrini in the movie, who could only work in pest control. And sadly, this anti-intellectual attitude is coming back, but now on the far right. So it's becoming clear that far-right and far-left views are alarmingly similar, and that's why extremism is harmful no matter which side it comes from. Now, director Șerban Marinescu is great at adapting dramatic stories, skillfully blending themes of morality and injustice. While the book is more focused on Petrini's philosophical ideas, the film zooms in on his personal journey, giving a more emotional and visual portrayal of his suffering, making the tone feel more intense. It's a brutally honest look at the darkest parts of the era, though it has been criticized for its graphic content. And yes, there are a few really graphic scenes that are not pleasant to watch. Visually, the film starts with a warm brown tone in the early scenes, then shifts to a cold dark palette when Petrini is in captivity, and finally it moves to a grey-green color that symbolizes uncertainty. The camera often focuses on Petrini's expressions, really highlighting Stefan Iordache's impressive performance. The music is almost entirely diegetic, coming from radios and live instruments, which adds to the film's realism.
Urcă trenul printre muniți ca un șarpe lung măr.
Harsh sound effects like barking dogs pull the viewer deeper into the oppressive atmosphere of the labor camp. All those technical elements come together to show the grim reality under Romania's secret police, the Securitate. Oh, I sure hope we won't have to deal with securists in power anymore. The English translation is a bit awkward, especially with some of the swear words that the translator was unable to translate, and this kind of softens the tension in certain conversations. Honestly, someone should make a video explaining the meaning of these phrases. Oh wait, I already did. It's a tough film to watch, but it's a real and raw representation of life in Romania during communism. And things weren't great, surprise surprise. I can't wait to get more death threats from the tankies, just like last time when I dared to say that life under a communist dictatorship was horrible and that our parents and grandparents had to endure some disgusting human rights violations. Oh well, lately I've been getting more of those comments and messages from the other extreme side of the political spectrum, so it will be nice to circle back to the commies. All in all, this is an amazing movie that tells the story the creators had been eager to share for 40 years but were unable to do so, and they did an excellent job showing the world how bad things really were in that era. If you made it this far into the video, you're the real MVP. Comment, thanks for the kurtush to confuse the new viewers, and since you're already down there, give me a thumbs up. Now let's check out the last one. Cosy Dens is a 1999 Czech film directed by Jan. Oh no, not that letter again. I can't pronounce it, so I'm just gonna say Žebek. The film was directed by Jan Žebek, and it's truly a hidden gem in Czech cinema. It's loosely based on Petr Šábach's novel titled Shit on Fire. Yes, that's the title of the book, and the movie blends comedy with emotional depth in a way that just clicks together perfectly. The title Pelishki translates into Little Dance, symbolizing the warmth of personal, cozy spaces, which is perfect for this intimate family story set against the backdrop of political chaos. The story takes place in 1960s Czechoslovakia, and if you know anything about the history of this region, the 1960s brought a glimmer of hope with Alexander Dubček and his reforms during the Prague Spring. Dubček's idea of socialism with a human face meant pushing for more freedom of speech, less censorship, and a more open government. But the Soviet Union wasn't having it. They saw these reforms as a threat to their control over Eastern Europe, so in August of 1968 they sent in over 200,000 troops and 2,000 tanks to crush the movement.
Wait a minute!
Are you telling me that Russians invaded a country they had no right to control, all to stop it from gaining independence and leading towards democracy? And they used brutal military force with a flimsy excuse? Wow, shocking. The crackdown was harsh, instantly shutting down Dubček's reforms and bringing back strict communist rule. But the people didn't just accept it, they fought back in creative and brave ways, blocking roads, removing street signs to confuse Soviet troops, and staging peaceful protests. Sadly, hundreds of people were killed and injured during the occupation. Dubček was removed from power and replaced with a Soviet puppet leader, starting an era of normalization that brought even more repression. This invasion left deep scars on the country, fueling long-term resentment towards Soviet rule and planting the seeds for future resistance. The movie kicks off on Christmas Day of 1967, introducing us to three families trying to navigate life in 1960s Czechoslovakia. Mihal's family is warm and tight-knit, full of playful adults who love silly jokes and trolling each other. His father, a die-hard communist and army officer, is obsessed with socialist inventions, believing they prove communism's superiority, even though they usually embarrass him.
Obyčejná sklenička se rozbije. Tak tomu skutečně dřív bývalo, že se obyčejné skleničky rozbíjely. Ale pak se pár chytrých hlav dalo dohromady a řekli dost. A není náhodou, že těch pár chytrých hlav se sešlo v Polské lidové republice, v socialistickém Polsku.
To není.
No prostě nerozbitná sklenička.
Jak nerozbitná?
Zázrak.
A few moments later.
This obsession fuels his hatred for anything Western, creating constant tension at the home. Living upstairs is Mihal's crush, Jindřiška, whose strict father despises both fascists and communists and has a famously short temper. She, on the other hand, is rebellious and sharp-witted, often butting heads with him over his rigid rules. Mihal is completely smitten with her, but she's way more interested in their mutual friend, whose parents live in America and introduce them to Western pop culture, always showing off cool things and gifts from across the Iron Curtain. Meanwhile, Mihal's single aunt struggles to find a decent father figure for her son, dating a series of weird and unsuitable men. The movie follows these families through the chaotic months leading up to August 1968, capturing their personal struggles as politics creep into every aspect of their lives. As the Prague spring brings a glimpse of hope, the story takes a turn, leading to the crushing disappointment of the Soviet invasion. In the end, the film is a touching coming-of-age story and slice-of-life comedy that beautifully portrays an era filled with hope, heartbreak, and the unbreakable bonds of family. The characters are one of the film's biggest strengths thanks to great writing and even better performances. Kristina Novakova is fantastic as Jindřiška, a sharp and rebellious teenager whose sarcasm and pranks show both her wit and her frustration with her strict father. Jerzy Kodet, who plays her father, does an amazing job as a grumpy perfectionist whose PTSD from World War II makes him overly controlling. The no scene between them perfectly sums up their relationship.
Mluvím o senzačních, maminčiních nocích.
O těchto nefalšovaných, typických vídeňských bramborových knedlících? Ty si je opovažuješ nazývat
Noky.
knedliky?
Vysvětlím rozdíl mezi knedlíky a noky.
A few moments later.
Mě vyslýchali nacisti! Nacisti, děvenko! Na mě si s takovým nějakým nokem nepřijdeš!
Miroslav Donutil plays Mihal's father with the perfect mix of comedy and tragedy. His excitement over socialist inventions is both hilarious and painfully naive, especially when they fail in the most embarrassing ways.
No pozor. To nejsou obyčejné lžičky. To jsou lžičky, které vyvinuli výzkumníci z NDR. Víte?
A few moments later.
Mihal's hopeless crush on Jindřiška is like a mirror of his father's blind faith in communism, and as both are chasing something that will never really love them back. Bolek Polivka as Mihal's uncle adds to the chaos, constantly bickering with Mihal's father, making for more of the film's funniest moment. The writing does an amazing job of creating deep, believable characters with natural and engaging dialogue. Through Michal and Jindřiška's families, we see a stark contrast between two opposing worldviews. Both fathers rule their homes with iron fists, creating emotional distance and practically pushing their kids towards rebellion. The film also critiques Soviet dominance by highlighting how monuments of Soviet heroes are everywhere, while local sacrifices go completely unrecognized. Jindřiška's father's small handmade memorial stands as a quiet but powerful act of resistance. Then the Soviet invasion of August of 1968 crashes in, shattering any hope or real change. Just like that, all dreams are wiped away. This sudden collapse of hope makes the earlier humor and connection even more bittersweet, because no matter how much they laughed, the world around them was always waiting to pull the rug out from their feet. The humor is built on clever situations that slowly build up to unexpected punchlines. Some of the best jokes in the film carry powerful political messages, making them even more impactful and memorable. The pacing is just right, with well-placed time skips that keep things fresh and immersive. Visually, the film has a warm and nostalgic color palette, lots of sandy browns, golden beige, and deep reds. These colors add to the cozy sentimental feel, while also symbolizing resilience. But in the final scenes, the tones shift to cooler shades, reflecting the heartbreak and devastation after the invasion. The way the film is framed is also interesting. You can notice how the families are usually captured in a single shot. For example, Mikhail is often seen slouching or looking frustrated while his parents are always close together. Meanwhile, Jindřiška's family feels more distant and tense, and she only really gets close to her mother when her father isn't around. Mikhail's aunt's family dynamic is even more fractured, and you might notice that in scenes where three of them are together, they always appear in separate shots rather than as a unit, which highlights their fragmentation. I also loved the little traditions sprinkled throughout, like pouring melted lead to tell fortunes.
Co tam vidíš, Jindřichu? Dávám bolševikovi rok. Maximálně 2.
And of course the classic image of drunk adults huddled around a tiny table, which was just pure gold. The music is another highlight. The film blends a moving background score with meaningful songs that reflect the era. The adults most likely listen to Czech music, while the teenagers are all about American hits, perfectly capturing the generational divide. The movie was directed by Jan Hřebejk. Fucking hell. The movie was directed by Jan Hřebejk, who was born the same year the story begins. The original story was written by Petr Šabák, who was around Michal Hřebejk's age during the Prague Spring, which makes the story feel even more authentic. Clearly, having lived through these events helped them tell such a heartfelt and realistic story. This movie brilliantly shows how politics shape different generations and how, even in the darkest times, family is what truly matters. It's also a great reminder to choose wisely when it comes to love, whether it comes to chasing the pretty girl next door who barely notices you, or pledging blind loyalty to a regime or a political ideology that only sees you as a tool to be used and discarded. And that's why this is my all-time favorite movie. So if you haven't watched it yet, you should definitely check it out. Although the Central and Eastern European film industry has produced many amazing movies that portray the raw reality of our region, people still prefer Hollywood's cringeworthy portrayals full of cheap stereotypes and predictable plots. And as a result, our films don't receive the global appreciation that they deserve. But these movies remain incredibly important because they help us remember the darkest parts of our past and guide us towards a better future. So I highly encourage you to watch them and show them to your friends and family. If you want to see more content about Central and Eastern Europe, check out my other videos, and if you like access to 4K clips from my travels and behind the scenes videos about my editing process, consider becoming a channel member. Thanks for tuning in and have a nice day.